Good evening and welcome once again everybody to the Safari Guide of the Year 2025, where we find ourselves once again at the Kariega Private Game Reserve in the Eastern Cape. We've had a fantastic day. We're all sort of easing into things. Everyone's relaxing and getting to know each other a little bit more. So we had a lovely family day. It was down to business first thing this morning though. Myself and Roger from Canon took Jason out on the photographic safari where he wowed us with his photographic skills. We had plenty of birds to point the cameras at, and we also had a few mammals right near the end. We did travel to quite a far side of the reserve, so we got to see a little bit more of Kariega today. On the bushwalk was Cameron. Apparently he did a very good job. Things were a little bit tough initially, but the walk did end off with an incredible encounter with some white rhinos. Apparently it was 3 white rhinos. Cameron did a very nice approach and showed the judges a little bit more about what he can do. On the game drive this morning was Matthew. Matthew did a fantastic job as well, apparently. The judges and the guests loved his technicality, and apparently he showed some really nice local knowledge about the Eastern Cape, which everybody loved. Afterwards we came back for a lunch break, and then it was straight on to probably the most anticipated event at Safari Guide of the Year, which was the advanced rifle handling. Our esteemed judge James Steyn, who's been he's been judging the competition since right from the very beginning, gave us a fantastic demonstration. He was the range officer today, and the rifle handling category is probably the aspect of field guiding that guides are going to use the least in their careers, but it is perhaps the most critical, because obviously no guide ever wants to shoot an animal in the course of a safari activity, but you know, we are walking in areas of potentially dangerous game, and there is a chance that one day you do find yourself in a spot of bother, and it's always nice to know that your guide is well equipped to deal with that critical situation when it arises. And I can safely say that our fire finalists did a fantastic job, and whoever goes out with them is going to be in very, very safe hands indeed. So we are gathered around the fireplace here tonight again for our favorite part of the evening, which is the storytelling. But before we get on to that, we also had a very lovely evening tonight. Michelle always has little tricks in the bag, and this evening we all got into our funky colors: oranges, blues, reds, and greens. And we had a potjie contest this evening. So we had to answer some ridiculously difficult questions to get our ingredients. It was something akin to a MasterChef contest. And then we were judged on hospitality, presentation, and the actual taste of the potjie. Now I will say that I was on the team that came third, so my team and I are guessing that there was some very dubious judging, some bribery going on, and we're hoping that the actual judges of the competition are doing a little bit of a better job. So we are with Megan this evening. Megan is our only female contestant, a finalist at this year's competition, and she's flying the flag high for female guides in Southern Africa. It's traditionally been a very male-dominated industry, but in recent years the girls are really showing us what they can do. And this evening is Megan's chance to come up and share a story with us this evening. So I'm going to invite Megan to please come up to the floor with me. Welcome, Megs. How's it going?
Good, thank you.
How have you enjoyed the day so far?
Oh, it's been incredibly nerve-wracking and exciting at the same time, but it's always fun to be on the shooting range. I think all the other guides can attest to that, and it was just so much fun. What a blast. And this evening as well, gosh, I can't remember when last I actually laughed that hard. It was wonderful.
What team were you on?
Team Blue, we came in second.
Excellent. And the shooting, would you say that that's probably one of your strongest aspects in the competition?
I definitely enjoyed it. I think I shot well today. And you know, obviously the first couple of shots you fire off, you're just trying to figure out what you're doing and where you are. And after that, it's a breeze. So I must admit, I had such a ball. It doesn't matter what happens in the end. What a great experience, yeah. It was great.
Well, you certainly looked very good. Everything looked very smooth and very competent, so we were very impressed.
Thank you.
Today.
Thank you.
What would you say is your worst or most worrying element in the competition?
I would have to say the guided photographic experience. I am a trails guide, I'm not a photographic guide, but I'm very lucky that I have a family who is very into their photography, so they were able to give me quite a few tips before coming into the competition, and hopefully it's enough that I'll be able to hold my own.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to spending a bit of time with you behind the camera, I think tomorrow as well?
Tomorrow afternoon.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to that.
Thank you.
It's very nice to have you up here. Obviously, you're also a Hoedspruit local, so my hometown. It's nice to have somebody from the hometown here. Yeah. Half of us are actually from Hoedspruit, so
that's awesome.
Not unusual. But can you tell us a little bit more about the areas that you operate in? What type of safaris do you guide, and which areas do you often guide in?
Right, so I'm a freelance trails guide. So I do a lot of my overnight trails with Manakusa Safaris, Mr. Greg Jarvis, and he took me on a couple of years ago and said, right, come on in. If you really want to walk and if that's your passion, you can do it here on Bululi. So I am operating on a private farm in Bululi, where I do my multi-day trails. And then what's great about being a freelance guide, especially in Hoedspruit, where it is such a huge variety of lodges, so many people call me up and say, listen, can you do a walk in the morning here, or can you do a walk in the morning there? So I'm able to walk in so many different areas, which is really very, very special to me. I've met so many amazing people just going from lodge to lodge to lodge and helping people out. And it's been a wonderful experience. I'll keep doing that for as long as I possibly can.
Nice. And apparently sometimes you even get to go back home at the end of the day as well.
I do. I get to go home. I can do a 3-hour walk in the morning and still get home to do homeschooling with my daughter. So it works well.
Yeah, you were telling me the other day that you're a mom. So would you like to give a little shout out to your daughter perhaps?
Hi, Mas. Go to bed after this.
I'm sure she's rooting for you back home, and I hope that you enjoy sharing your story with all of us, and I'm sure that she'll be watching you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Megs.
Thank
Please
you so
enjoy.
much. Thank you. Not quite sure where to position myself. Right, hi guys. Yes, what a wonderful day, hey? I think everyone's still kind of coming down from the shooting range. I know I am. Adrenaline's still kind of up here. But this is such a natural place to gather around a fire. And we do that all over the world. If you think about it, All over the world, people gather around a fire. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Although it can be one of the most devastating elements, it's also the most comforting. When you sit around a fire, you just feel comfortable. And when we're on safari, it's definitely the place where we get to know our guests. After a long day in the bush, we pull up a chair around a fire, and that's where we can really ask each other questions. So the guests will ask us, how long have you been guiding for? What's your favorite animal? But the most common question, and again, I'm sure my fellow guides will attest to this, is what is the most dangerous animal? Or what animal do you think is the most dangerous? Now, everyone here will have a different answer to that. My fellow guides, visitors to South Africa that come on safari very often, and even our judges who have been in the industry for years will have a different answer. So I could ask Bernice, what would you say in your mind is the most dangerous animal?
Probably a crocodile.
Crocodile? Yeah, definitely. Well, Ashley or Veronica, you've been to South Africa a couple of times. What would you think? What would you say?
Cape buffalo.
Cape buffalo. And then one of my fellow guides, Matthew. Humans. Yeah, very good. We all have a different answer. When I started guiding, the most dangerous animal in my mind was black rhino. And this didn't stem from a bad experience. It wasn't an encounter gone wrong, but rather the stories that I was told growing up. Black rhino are always aggressive. They're always grumpy. They charge without provocation. One guide said to me, they're just plain nasty. And hearing those stories grew into a fear for me. I became fearful of black rhino. And then it was time for me to start moving up in my qualifications, and I wanted to be a trails guide. I wanted to get to professional, and I wanted to get to DG one day. And we all have that little logbook. And I opened the back, and there was the name Black Rhino. And my vision tunneled to this name, and it stood out in big bold letters. And I thought, it's okay, I have time. Don't rush into it now. You can get your black rhinos when you're ready. And a very dear friend of mine and a phenomenal mentor, Bruce Lawson, phoned me up and he said, Megs, I'm doing 2 back-to-back trails. Now's your time to get your encounters and your hours. Come with. So of course I was still quite young back then, and I just jumped at the chance. I said, absolutely, I'm there. I didn't ask questions. Just tell me where to meet you. And he said, no, we're going to this and this place. And I said, fantastic, I'm there. And off I go, very excited. Bruce didn't mention a thing about where we were walking. And on the first day, we were probably about 45 minutes into the walk. I'm walking second behind him. And we're going through some fairly thick bush. And I'm kind of looking down this side, and I'm looking down this side, and I was just looking what was around me. And the next minute I walked into the back of Bruce. But I saw his arm out like this. And I kind of peeked over his shoulder, and I saw a rhino bum. But it was the most bizarre thing. It was a black rhino cow, and she was moving away from us. She had her head so close to the ground, and she was breathing so heavily that the dust was coming up from under her nostrils. We could see it as she walked away. So Bruce quickly ushered everyone behind a termite mound, and we watched her walk off. He said, let's get down to a big dam down here, and let's see if she comes out. And sure shooting, she came out as we got to the dam. But still, head low, huffing and puffing, walking in a circle, and then going out and walking in a circle. She was just all over the place. And I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. I hadn't spent a lot of time around black rhino. And after a while, she disappeared off into the bush. But I did notice she had a big, big belly. Her belly was almost touching the ground. And something in my mind said, she's pregnant, she's in early labor, she must be. This is such strange behavior. Anyway, that was that. but a little lesson was learnt there. That night in our camp, went to bed at about 11 o'clock. It was a hot summer's night. I got into my sleeping bag, one leg out the side, getting super comfy, and I hear this unapologetically loud chewing. And the person who was on watch sort of stood up, shone the torch, and she went this way, and all of a sudden she went back very quickly, and I knew that there was something there. And I thought, is it hippo? Is it buffalo? Lesson learnt. It was a young black rhino bull that was moving through in the pitch black. So in that first trail, I had 2 rhino encounters. A black rhino cow in early labor. It was confirmed that she had dropped a calf 2 days later. And a young black rhino bull. So we had a day at home, cleaned the rifles, repacked the bags, and off we went again on the second trail. Now this was one that I will never forget. It was very rainy. Bruce said, listen, pack your little one-man tent, we're going to get rained on. And the first 2 days were magic. We had buffalo, we had elephant. It was absolutely beautiful. And the last night, we're sitting around our tiny little fire, and it's just getting dark, and Bruce is sitting in his chair with his diary open, as he always does, and he was busy filling out his diary. Glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, looking down. I was sitting next to him here, and I see a silhouette in the distance of a rhino as it's getting dark. And I said, Bruce, there's a rhino. I said, it looks like a black rhino. And he didn't lift his head, but he lifted his eyes above his glasses, and he looked, and he said, no, it's white. And he carried on writing in his diary. Now, I'm not going to be the person to correct Bruce Lawson. I just said, if he told me it was a Sumatran rhino coming towards us, I would have said, that is awesome, and I would have logged it. And I sat, and I was watching this rhino, and I was looking at Bruce, and looked at the rhino, and I looked at Bruce, and she turned, and she started walking directly towards us. But then I noticed something behind her. Tiny, tiny calf behind her. And I said, Bruce, please look again. And at this point, I was in crouch position, so I was doing this. And my tent was there, and that rhino was coming from there. And I'm like, if Bruce says engage, I'm going to run and dive into my tent. And again, he was writing in his diary. He lifted his eyes, but this time they stayed fixed on this animal. And I was just waiting for him to say something. And he closed his diary, and that was enough for me. And I bolted to the tent. Did a Brian Habana rugby dive into the tent. And I could see everyone else scattering. But now I am in this position. I'm too scared to sit down now because I know that she's coming closer. I don't want to move. So I'm like this with my head in a one-man tent. Now I'm standing. So my head is like this, getting friction from the tent. So my hair is kind of standing out to the side. And I turn and I look at Bruce, and he's crouched behind a russet bush willow going, it's fine, you're fine. I'm in full-blown panic mode. Don't know what to do. She came and stopped within about 2 meters of the tent, and it had been raining that day. So my tent door was open. I was trying to dry some things out. There were ponchos hanging. They were flapping in the wind. Everything in our camp was directed at my tent. And I stood there, and I looked at Bruce, and I kind of looked back, and she charged about 3 or 4 times. Just a little rush, and then she would move back, and another rush, and she would move back. And eventually, I heard her turn and move away, and Bruce said, no, you're fine, come out. We came out, and we saw where she had stopped, right outside my tent. And I just couldn't believe our luck. Last morning, as we were walking home, now you have to picture us completely soaking wet, smell like a dog. My hair's still up here from the night before being rubbed on the tent. And we're in this huge open area. I can see the windsock on the helipad at the warden's house. I'm like, here we go, we're almost home. At this point, I just want to get home. I'm tired, I'm cold, and I'm done. And as we're walking across the open area, I hear oxpeckers. And I heard a guest behind me go, oh, come on, enough is enough. And we turned, and there was a huge black rhino boar coming out of the quarries into the open area. Now, we had nowhere to go. But Bruce, always teaching, turned to me and said, right, what do you do now? And I just said, just get to the drainage line, I'm done. Anyway, we moved on, and that black rhino kind of watched us move off, and then he went his way. We got back to the house. My friend, who's the warden there, usually greets me with a hug, saw the state I was in and opted for a high five instead. But we cleaned up, sat outside, and I said to Bruce, did you know that there were this many black rhino here? He said, yeah. I said, why on earth didn't you tell me? He knew I had a fear of them. He said, would you have come on this trail and been as calm as you were if you'd known? I said, no, probably not. So going back to my original question when I started, what is the most dangerous animal? And I can tell you now with absolute confidence, the most dangerous animal in the bush is the animal that you still have a fear of. It's the animal that you haven't spent enough time with. And it's the animal that you need to take your time, find them, and spend time with them. There is no dangerous animal, but the animal that you fear the most will always be the most dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you, Megs. Well done. Well done, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us of how to conquer your fear of black rhinos and the fear within yourself. So we do have a very special guest this evening. As you all know, that we have been running the Safari Guide of the Year competition since the year 2011, and in that inaugural competition, that was won by a fine gentleman by the name of Greg Lederle. Now, Greg has since gone on to become one of the world's most renowned private guides. He runs a very successful business, Lederle Safaris, and he has a very, very busy schedule, so he has very few days in the year which are free, and he's very kindly offered to share his time with us here this week as a judge. And we're very happy and welcome Greg back to this year's competition. He's got a little story to share with us this evening as well. Please come and share the floor with us, Greg.
Hello, Greg.
Thank you.
So obviously quite a lot has changed since 2011. You know, the competition has evolved beautifully. It's become a very esteemed and well followed competition right now, and you know, there's obviously the level of guiding is exceptional, the judges are exceptional, the locations that this continues to move around the country, it showcases the various different ecotones and environments that we all are very fortunate to guide within. And I haven't spoken to the organizers, but obviously the prizes in the old days was very different to what they are now. The categories have sort of evolved, but I just wanted to start off by adding that there's a new category now, and I'd like to invite Mark Bishop up to accept the prize for the most easily pickpocketed person. And I want to hand your glasses back to you, and if you could come up and accept this prize, because you clearly didn't see it coming. You're welcome.
Thank you. And the orange should have won, I'd just say. Yeah.
So I'm going to do a sort of a two-chapter story, and the one story that I wanted to share with you is, as all guides know, when you're just about to head off on a trail, and I'm going to sort of tag on to what Megan was saying earlier, your pre-trail briefing is obviously very critical. And so this is about 15 years ago, and we had a guest in the camp in Madikwe that I was working in. And this was her first safari. She was actually a tour operator or an agent coming out from the US. And she said, I'd very much like to do a walk. And I said, absolutely. First time to Africa, let's do a walk. Absolutely. She'd done one game drive. And I said, let's go for a walk tomorrow morning. So we jump in the vehicle and we head off to sort of the starting point, and everything was great. Get out of the vehicle. And it's early morning, the sun's just up. And I give the pre-trail briefing. And 99% of the time, that pre-trail briefing is just something that you say, everything goes well, get back in the vehicle, get back to camp, do your trail, everything's fine, nothing actually happens. But the importance of that pre-trail briefing is absolutely critical, because when it really goes down and something serious happens, it's very important for everybody in that pre-trail briefing to understand what their role is in assisting, helping, being quiet, crouching, following instructions, etc., etc. So we jumped out of the vehicle, did the full pre-trail briefing, and headed off. And we're walking on a trail. It's very nice. Grass is pretty tall. I think it was in about April. And we see in the distance there's a big white rhino bull. Fantastic. Wind's in the right direction. We sort of stalk in, sitting at about 50 meters away. Bull's just munching away. He's having a great time. We view him for about 10, 15 minutes. Everything's awesome. We back out and we give it a big loop. We give it like, a couple of 100 meters, move around, carry on. We find the trail again. And we're back on the trail. Everything's fine. And as you know, when you're in the bush, trails lead into and out of one another. And we're on this trail, and one of the trails that came in had a big male lion track on it. And I said to the guest, would you like to track this male? And she was like, absolutely, this sounds fantastic. And I was like, okay, cool. But while we're tracking him, don't stop and take a picture of the pretty flower here and the lovely butterfly over there. Stay close to me, because we don't know how far he is, we don't know what's happening, and you don't know what you're going to walk into. So anyway, we carry on, everything's great. Tracking. And the thing is, when you're tracking anything, you've got to, and it comes with experience, and it comes with time in the bush, which the judges, the guests, the guides, everybody will actually know very well. You spend a certain amount of time down and the rest of the time looking up. So you've got to be keeping an eye out for what's in front of you. So we're looking and you're looking up. So you're tracking a male lion, you don't know where he is. It's still pretty cool in the morning, and we're going, everything's great. Another trail comes in, and all of a sudden the big male's tracks are on top of a big pride that has clearly walked. So he's obviously been early morning, been looking for them, everything's great. And I said, Sonia, you okay? She said, yeah, absolutely, this is great. And we just keep going. And you're walking in stealth mode, you're quiet, you're checking the wind, everything's great. And we're going. And we find an area where the pride had sort of settled down. You can see where they've been lying their bellies, and you can see where there were sort of sub-adults that have been playing and whatever. But now you've got to establish where this trail continues from there. So there are various, different sections in this sort of open clearing, and you don't know which way they've gone. And so we eventually establish, okay, they've headed this way, and back on the trail, and you're going, spending about 10% of the time looking down, tracking, and actually 90% of the time looking up, because you don't know how far they are. Carry on going. And then we get to another clearing, and you can see where they've all been laying down. And the temperature is beginning to rise a bit. We've probably been on the lion tracks for about an hour or so. And so you realize, okay, these cats could be looking, for shade, settling down for their afternoon or their daytime nap. And then I broke one of the cardinal rules of tracking, is I spent too much time looking down. So now you're trying to establish where these cats have actually moved, where these lions have gone. And I was looking down and focusing, and I picked up movement to my right, and I turned and I looked, and a big male flanked by a female, and they were coming flat out towards us. And they were probably about 50 yards away and closing pretty quickly. And when they got to about, call it 30 meters, the growling starts coming in, and they're coming. So obviously you're carrying a weapon, which everybody did today with the 4.58s. Loaded it up, and I said, Sonia, she says, I'm right behind you. And then you shoulder and you're ready, but you're yelling the animal down. So I'm shouting obscenities at this animal, and the two of them sort of come down. They settle at probably about 12 to 15 meters. Now they're both down there, and I say, Sonia, she says, yep. And I said, just grab my backpack, so you lead us slowly out, And now you're trying to appease these lions. You're like, easy guys, easy, easy. We take 2 steps back. So now you've got them in front of you at about 12 yards. And then out of the left-hand side of me, I get movement. And his brother is now coming 90 degrees from our left. So now you've got to take the bead off these 2 cats that are lying, growling at you, and turn to this other male that's now coming in, obviously backing up his brother, and he's charging from the left. So now you're trying to chameleon and watch these guys and focus on this guy coming in. So you turn and you got him and you yell him down. He's at another 12, 15 yards away. Everything's okay. Sonia, yeah, I got your backpack. Okay, cool. But now at the back, 60 to 100, or 60, 80 meters behind these lions, you just see heads sticking out of the grass. And some of the sub-adults are now like, okay, mom and dad are having a jaw here, let's hunt these things. So they start flanking to the right. So now they're moving this way, and I don't have enough eyeballs to look in enough directions to know where the lions are going. So I'm like, Sonia, she says, I've still got your backpack, and yeah, okay, lead us out. So now you've got him and one of the girls there, and we slowly but surely back out. These guys see us moving slowly. And interestingly enough, as we're backing out, the advantage we had is it sort of drew everybody, the lions, sort of more to in front of us. So we're backing out, 20 yards, great, 30 yards, great. You think, okay, cool, we're out of here. 30, 40 yards, and then the males came again, and then the females came, and now some of the other females that were part of the sub-adults are now part of that. So we were having lions charging us, probably about 6 or 7 lions at a time, were coming at us, growling, and now you stand your ground, get your rifle ready, and you yell, and 15, 20 yards away, and they sort of drop and they growl, and tails are whooshing and everything like that. And to cut a long story short, we backed out, walking backwards with this guest on her 2nd day of safari in Africa. We're backing out, and she's leading me around logs and holes and all that sort of thing. And we walked almost a mile backwards. We went back and we measured it. So it was about 1.5 kilometers that we walked backwards. And every time we gained in the region of about 50 yards, they would come at us and they would charge. And you shout them down again, they settle, and you back out. And they were revving and charging the whole time, and we just couldn't get away from it. Towards the end, we were still about 2 kilometers from the vehicle that we'd left when we started the walk. And I was beginning to lose my voice from shouting at these lions the whole time. And by then you run out of adrenaline because you're now just exhausted of yelling, and you're like, okay, just leave us alone, come on, just pack it in. We're backing out, and certain areas of Madikwe, they can get very, very thick thickets of sickle bush and blackthorn. And to the right, you heard that deep grumble from elephant. And I thought, no, not elephant as well. So we heard that, and I'm like, oof, okay, now these lions are here, but they've sort of picked up and they're now focusing on the bush to our right. Anyway, these ellies break the bush. They're about 30 yards away now. These lions see them, and the ellies luckily then charge and chase the lions. And these lions then scatter. Ellies book through. I've got a rifle that's hot. Pick it up, and I grab Sonia by around the shoulder. And I say, now we walk briskly, and we get the hell out of Dodge. So anyway, so we're heading back, everything, and we're like, whew, okay. So now there's some proper distance between us and that element of danger. Get back to the vehicle, rifle's safe, everything's cool, and she goes into a state of, I think the correct term is hypovolemic shock, where your arteries are dilated because of the adrenaline, but your adrenaline subsides, but your arteries remain big, so your blood pressure drops. So she's doing one of these, and ready to faint and whatever. So I'm like, all right, sit down, have an apple, here's a cup of coffee, here's a shot of amarula with the coffee. So she recovers, she gets a bit of color into her face, and I'm like, great. Let's go back to where this all kicked off in the vehicle now. And she says, are you sure? I said, no, it'll be fine. So we drove all the way back to basically the area where I'd made the error of actually focusing too much on the ground. And we didn't know it. And this is the thing about you don't know what you're walking into. And we'd walked into quite a big pride. I think there were 18 members in the entire pride. But I think that night or that morning, one of the lionesses had brought her cubs for the first time, that were at about the age of 6 weeks, into that pride. And I think everybody was just tense. And we walked straight into that. And the sort of the moral of the story is always be prepared. Make sure that your pre-trail briefing is solid, because you don't know what you're walking into. So that's the one story that I've got. And then I wanted to just touch on another sort of a special element. And this is the thing about guiding, is you don't know how much you touch other people's lives. People in your vehicle, sitting in that vehicle, they could have saved their entire life to come on that one safari, and you've got them for 3 days, 2 days, 5 days, whatever it is. And that memory will go with them for the rest of their lives. And as a guide, I think the primary thing is you're a teacher. But at the same time as being a teacher, you are always a student, because you're constantly learning. You can learn from a newbie guide, you can learn from somebody who's got their head buried in the books, they haven't had a single hour's experience. And at times you're the teacher to other guides, but you are always a student, because you never learn enough. That pot is never full. And James Steyn, I don't know if you'll remember this, but many years ago in the Eastern Cape, which is obviously this neighborhood, you and Collett and myself walked into a pride of lion. And I was quite a green guide, you know, I wanted to build hours and learn experience, and James had obviously a huge amount of experience. And we walked into that pride, and you predicted it so brilliantly, and you said, one of the females is probably going to growl or bark at us, and then the cubs that are with him, they were pretty big cubs, they're going to scatter, because they don't know where the aggression's coming from. And true as Bob, walk in, she gives a growl, cubs scatter, and two of them are sort of trotting towards us, ears back, listening to their mother, but running towards us. And James is very casual, like, you just got to let them know where you are, and you know, clap, clap, and they look up, see me, see us, and they trot back to mom, and everything settles again. We have a great viewing on foot for a couple of minutes, and then we're back out. And I don't know if you ever remember that, James, but these are the things that shape you as a guide, as a student then. And years later, I was very fortunate to have an almost identical situation where I'd gained experience, and I was able to pay that forward to other less experienced guides, where almost to the T, the exact same thing happened. We walked into lions, and one of them growled, cubs ran, and I took a little leaf out of that playbook. Guys, you clap, and you look at you, they pick it up on you, they trotted back to mom. And the thing is, you never underestimate the impact that something that you may have forgotten, a sighting that you may have had, that could just dissipate into that vault of memory, you know, and over time, you won't necessarily remember it. But the impact that you have as a guide, it can really shape a huge amount of things that can take place in the conservation world, and not only that, but in their personal lives. So never underestimate the element of being that student, and never be arrogant enough to never want to teach. So everything's about sharing that knowledge and paying it forward. So to all the contestants, it's been amazing spending time with you guys, and obviously good luck for the rest of it. But yeah, it's been a special few days, and look forward to the rest of the time. And thank you very much for allowing me to share a few stories. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you so much, Greg. What the most, and I think that goes to speak for why it's so important, you know, all this extensive years and years of training that safari guides have to undergo, and the benefit of having a very qualified safari guide with you. And I'm sure that Sonia, it's an experience that she'll never forget. And we're very, very lucky and privileged to have you here with us. And we just want to thank you for making the time to come and join us and to impart your knowledge on the 5 finalists this evening. You know, obviously your story with James just shows how this knowledge is, and your presence with us. So thank you very much for joining us this evening, everybody. Please don't forget that we are streaming our events in the evenings live on our YouTube channel, and you can find those links on our Instagram and Facebook pages. We are off for our nightcap for this evening. We are about to hit bush midnight out here. So please do enjoy your evening and join us again tomorrow. Thank you very much. Goodbye. That's great.
Still show.